councillors.
Thank you. Rightio, 10 o'clock. So welcome everyone to this ordinary meeting of the Douglas Shire Council being held on Tuesday, 15th of December 2020 at the Mosman Council Chambers. I hereby give notice that in accordance with section 277E of the Local Government Regulations 2012, that the ordinary meeting of council has been restricted to the public because of health and safety reasons associated with the public health emergency involving COVID-19. Today, we have made availability for 8 members of the public attending, which will allow us to still remain within the restrictions we have been given, so that we're abiding by the Chief Health Officer's directive of the number of people in a space this size. I have this week spoken with our state representative to ask when this restriction can be lifted, and I'm awaiting a response. This ordinary meeting of council will be available to view via live stream on council's website and will be available for others to watch at a later time. I'd like to acknowledge the Gulyalandji people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay respect to their elders, both past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Indigenous Australians who may be listening or watching our meeting this morning. I note that all councillors are present, and of course we have our CEO, a limited amount of staff in the room. We also have a limited members of the public in our gallery, and representatives of the news media are present today as well. Councillors, conflicts of interest, please. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. So in item 5.2, material change of use for a retirement village, I would like to state that I, Councillor Abigail Nolan, informed the meeting that I've perceived declarable conflict of interest as a result of having the same surname as one of the applicants. Although I have a perceived declarable conflict of interest, I do not believe a reasonable person to have a perception of bias simply because of family relations in a small community. Therefore, I suggest to remain in the meeting. However, I will respect the decision of the meeting on whether I can remain and participate in the decision. Just before voting on whether or not I may participate, do we vote now or later on? Sorry.
Now.
Yeah. I would just like to state that the Department of Local Government clearly states that simply knowing someone does not mean you have a personal relationship. Mayors and councillors know a large number of people in the community. Some indicators that you might have a close personal relationship include if you live with them, no. If you have an intimate relationship with them, no. If you call them your close friend or include them in a wedding party, no. If you regularly meet with the person for meals or social activities, no. If other people regularly see you together in public, no. If your finances are connected, no. If you have ongoing or legal disputes with the person or other personal reasons for strongly disliking them, no. So these are just an example. So, but anyway, I'll just leave on to you guys.
Thank you, Councillor Nolly. I'm going to put this one to a vote, but I will say beforehand, I appreciate where you're coming from with your comments, but I also have to look at this from other perspectives as well. And I'm sure that in some cases, there has been public meetings that we've had here with workshops and emails where you have stated, the relationship with your uncle, who is your uncle.
Can we just put this to the vote, please, Mayor?
Well, sorry, but I've got an email here that it states in this example, it may be that I vote against the pool because I am against my relation. And that's something you wrote. So that's
no. Okay, Mayor, you're taking that completely out of context. I find that actually quite offensive. I actually think that is incorrect. That it is out of context. I was given an example of anywhere that people...
Maybe an example, but it's an example that could be...
No, that was an email between councillors And I stand by that email. I was given an example.
Yep.
That's very, very low.
So
That's very, very low.
it's not low.
It is.
The fact
It absolutely
your
is.
uncle could, well,
Vote
excuse
on
me,
it.
Councillor
I don't
Nolly, this
have
is a
a
meeting.
problem. What happens? Let councillors decide. I'm letting the councillors decide.
In the
That's
day,
a
it
low
could be
vote.
your uncle be the one that puts the complaint in, and you have to be answerable to that.
cousin.
And so,
Cousin.
so we will put it to the vote.
Yes, by all means.
So the motion has to be that we either allow Councillor Nolly to stay in the room to vote, or so if I can just ask for wording on this, please, because there is correct wording for it. Under the new legislation that went through on the 12th of October, there is correct wording that we have to use, and that's why
That's
we're
what
just
I've
looking
taken
for the
from.
wording.
Sorry, I have taken it from that word.
Move a motion stating that the council can decide to not let the council, move a motion stating reasons why the council participation is in the public interest and decide not to let the council vote and can or can decide to. No, that's not fine.
Well, I think we should just move a motion to allow Councillor Nolly to stay in the room to vote. So the motion will be put through that to allow Councillor Nolly to stay in the room to vote. All those in favour? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Samataro. All those against? Councillor Scomerson, Councillor Kerr. If I can ask the governance officer, since we have 2-2.
You have it. Yeah.
Then I'll cast the vote then. So that's in affirmative, sorry, for the negative for councillor, and I'll just stay and vote on that one. So councillor Samataro is 4. With the casting vote then. All right, there are no mayoral minutes. Number 4, confirmation of the minutes. That the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on Tuesday, 24th of November 2020 be confirmed. If I can have a mover, please. Councillor McEwen. Seconded by Councillor Zamataro. Anyone against? Any comments or changes? No. All those in favour, put to the vote. And that's passed. Carried unanimously. Right, let's go on to agenda items 5.1, the Daintree River Crossing Community Consultations. With discussions this morning, I'm going to ask that I can put through an amended motion on this one, which just simply adds to the end of it that the CEO comes back to the councillors with the key points of the contract before it's signed. So the motion would read that the council resumes contract negotiations 2019-84084, Daintree Ferry Contract 2021, and requests that the CEO is to bring back a report to councillors with key final terms of the contract for approval prior to signing. Reason behind that, well, if I can have a seconder on that, please. Councillor McEwen. Anyone against that change? All those in favour? And that's now carried to be the motion. All right, so I'm happy to now support this motion, which will allow staff to continue negotiations for 2 ferry crossing scenario across the Daintree River. I do, however, have reservations. Whilst I have the utmost confidence in the CEO and the staff in completing this contract, I want to make sure that I and other councillors are comfortable with what conditions, key performance indicators and penalties for failure to deliver are in the contract before signing the residents of the Shire over to a major contract such as this. I'm a lot more comfortable in moving forward now that I have confirmation through our community consultation that a majority of ratepayers and residents have had the opportunity to consider the options and the cost implications to this council, and therefore themselves as ratepayers, allowing us to move forward on one of the largest contracts that this council enters. This amended motion will also allow the previous and new councillors the opportunity to see further details of what the contract contains prior to its execution by the CEO. On the 3rd of December 2019, the previous council passed a closed session motion that would allow the CEO to enter into negotiations for an approved supplier to provide a tooth fairy contract for the residents of this Shire. The motion was passed in a closed session of council with no members of the public being able to see the costs to this council, possible costs to the ratepayers, possible fare increases, and no ability for this information to ever be made public under the state laws that govern closed sessions of council. On the 28th of May 2020, I put forward to the council as a mayoral minute requesting that negotiations on the ferry contract be suspended while further community consultation occurred that would represent a broader range of the community, and consultation that provided the community with the costs involved of both the two ferry system compared to the possibility options of a bridge. These results were then to be brought back to an ordinary council meeting so further discussions could be had on this matter. Today is that day. For as long as I can remember living in this region, there has been debate over a bridge or ferry scenario. As early back as the Event Traffic Solution Study in 2002, when queuing had been an issue at this location. It included reports showing there was a lack of infrastructure on the northern banks to allow local access approach, and it even mentioned buses traversing on the wrong side of the road, complaints that are still present to this day. Looking through the various papers and reports that have been prepared, perhaps many of the items that were in the report, such as this one, had been introduced, the discussions of a bridge may never have occurred. But many of these items didn't progress, and much of the changes that have occurred have been through a coroner report or attempted beautifications of the gateway entrance rather than any attempt to increase the speed of getting cars across the river. I think that for many, the crux hit when the ferry was taken out of service for maintenance, and the threat of a week of road closures exacerbated a long drawn-out issue of access problems north of the river. In June 2019, Douglas Shire Council conducted some very thorough consultation with user groups and locals in the river crossing area to gain knowledge of the issues in the river crossing, and GHD were employed to conduct and produce a very thorough Daintree River traffic assessment, traffic modelling report, which was able to confirm the when, hows and whys of the traffic congestion, and most importantly at the time, what the future would hold for this crossing. There was strong evidence from both that there were definite issues and there would be further issues in the future unless an alternative river crossing scenario was introduced. The GHD report very clearly showed that the best option to reduce queuing times was a bridge construction followed by a two ferry scenario. The do nothing option could not be considered as the traffic study confirmed that traffic was only growing and the issues would progressively become worse in the future. As a bridge was not up for discussion with the previous council, at the time the two ferry solution application had the best solution available for the price offered, and the motion with no consideration of cost to the ratepayers or the ratepayers being given any consideration of their preference for crossing. This recent public consultation has now let the community know that the two ferry system has large financial implications. The council will reduce over $1 million in revenue each year that it currently accounts for and uses in its budgets. That is $1 million that we need to make up with other methods, be that through either rate increases, ferry crossing price increases, or cutting back in services. None which are palatable, but discussions that myself and these councillors will need to look at when considering the next budget of this council. These are major financial consequences. I've heard people say that this consultation was a waste of time, but quite frankly, the consultation results clearly show that every third person you spoke to was in favour of the bridge. Every third person in this Shire never had an opportunity to have their say previously. Under the previous council, a third of our community's opinion obviously didn't count. Under this council, everyone's opinion is important, everyone's opinion is to be considered, and the community consultation will not be limited by popular beliefs. 5% to nearly 35% is an extreme difference, and shows that the previous consultation was flawed in this area. I believe that this council has achieved a great result with 3,409 compliance survey responses. These responses showed similar results across the board. As such, this argument can now formally be put to bed. We have an answer, and the majority of the community has now spoken for the direction that they would like to go, and that is a two-ferry system. I will say that this has been an emotional ride for many, with unfortunately some misconstrued ideals being promoted, and in some cases straight out lies. Whether the majority of the community chose a ferry or a bridge, the protection of our rainforest, the national park and the animals that reside there were always going to be paramount, and solutions to many of these concerns would need to be found. To finish, I'd like to say thank you to staff for the exceptional work they did on consultation period and the community for participating in the survey. Your patience while we completed this process and for being part of the solution is very much appreciated. Anyone wish to?
May I invite the officers
Yes,
in for
please.
questions?
Move the contract. So I moved it.
You don't email about the change of motion this morning?
We seconded for that adjusted amendment. We approved the amendment, we didn't approve the amendment. So just a seconder of the actual amendment, please.
First was to remove the amendment, and this is actually to move the
Your amendment.
Motion through the full notice of standing.
So if I can have a seconder just to move the motion.
new motion.
The first time we just changed it, and this is to actually accept it.
Okay.
Councillor Keeler, thank you. So I've spoken towards it. If anyone would like to speak against it. All right, any other comments?
Of the new motion about going into the ferry contract and then
To
coming
go
back to
against
us
the contract, yes,
to go against the new process.
yes. So no one wishes to speak against it, so I'll open it up to councillors to have their comments.
Okay.
If the council would like to say anything,
Yes, I would.
Councillor McEwen.
Okay, just a couple of points. I supported the mayoral minute put forward in April to temporarily suspend negotiations for a two-ferry service to explore the option of a bridge crossing. I did believe it was coming back to council to vote on. A few points I'd like to make on the results. I was very impressed with the responses from the public. 3,500 replies this time compares to 117 with the first so-called consultation. While not surprised at the 66-33 response, I have some issues with this result. If there was an organised pro-bridge group out there, as there was a pro-ferry group, I believe it would have been a bit closer. There were some untruths banded around during the consultation period. Plans for an industrial estate over the river, a McDonald's, changes proposed to the planning scheme, and the funding of the bridge. Even though a lot of time was placed into the planning of the consultation process, there were still some problems. Some issues that were brought up to me were there was confusion over the one card per household, not one person per vote. A lot of people say they did not receive the cards. A lot of people say they did not receive the information brochure that was sent out as well, even though I received both. Stating the financial, that information stating the financial implications. A lot of people are still unaware of the financial burden that comes with two ferries, the loss of $1 million plus income to general revenue, the increase or possible increase of rates to about 2.75%, additional costs with the extra dredging, additional costs to tour operators have stated they'll have to pass on to the tourists, which they believe may put them out of range for the average person to be able to travel to Cape Tribulation. While reading the submissions lodged, both for the bridge and for the two ferries, I do believe that in these modern times, there are solutions that we could overcome most of these problems. I know this is not the first time the bridge has been discussed, and I'm sure it's not the last. While this is not the result I was looking for, I will move forward as the wishes of the majority as to endeavour to find the solutions to these long outstanding issues. That is one of the reasons why I would not support that initial motion this morning, but I'm happy to move forward. We've got 2 new councillors here that have not seen the contract. And before I could make a decision on probably the biggest contract that the Shire is going to issue, I just need to know more information about it.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Councillor Zamatari?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kerr. Look, the reason we went to consultation, we had a mayoral minute, we went to consultation because from you, Mayor Kerr, said you wanted the public to decide on what they wanted. Now, there was an overwhelming majority that supported the ferry option. To me, that proves that Douglas Shire residents favour protecting the environment. That's an indication they didn't want a bridge in there. There's always been a belief that a bridge into the oldest rainforest on the planet would spell disaster for the environment, and that's a belief that I share as well. In the conversations I had during the consultation, that was the reason people voted in favour of the ferry service. They're concerned about the danger to the environment. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's no doubting what option people preferred. It was a whopping 66 to 33% wanting a ferry service. And as well as that, there's a petition being signed worldwide with in excess of 30,000 signatures that are, you know, concerned about, struggling about the Daintree rainforest. And look, in contrast to something Councillor McEwen said, this consultation was to give everyone a say. So it was disappointing that people that had signs erected around the Shire in support of the ferry service, the signs were stolen or destroyed. That to me is disappointing and illegal as well. But at the end of the day, there's no question that the ferry service is a preferred option. So we can carry on now, finalise the contract and move on to council business. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan.
Firstly, a huge thank you to the 3,992 people who responded to the survey, to the 31,000 people who signed a petition against the bridge, to the other petition I saw, where there was about another 10,000 signed against the bridge idea, and a big thank you to everyone who spoke to me or contacted me about this. Your time and input has been appreciated. And what I've been saying from the beginning has been unequivocally verified. No bridge. Backed by the survey opinion submitted, I have not read one single valid, truly meaty argument to build the bridge. Firstly, there will be a substantial loss of revenue through ferry through a ferry crossing fee. When this is combined with increased costs of building the bridge, maintaining the bridge, and adding depreciation costs for a bridge, one would imagine a very hefty increase in rates should we go with the bridge option. The ferry is also a source of jobs, and having 2 ferries will bring even more full-time employment. Environmentally, the ferry solar solution is far superior to a bridge. The bridge has a number of environmental concerns associated with it, and the new ferry will be 70% solar powered. A bridge will not magically increase prosperity in the Shire. There will not be a convention centre built north of the river, as an example, nor a factory. These are just examples. Emergency services will not be assisted with a bridge. The medical helicopter is faster than any road services, and the police and fire brigades phone ahead at any time of the day to have the ferry ready and waiting to cross. A bridge is not flood-proof. The north will still have days of being cut off, and this is just life in North Queensland. The ferry is part of the tourism experience and very marketable. A bridge may change the dynamics of tourism to make the tourist a passer-by and not a stop and spend in the Shire. So a bridge may possibly lose tourism revenue in the Shire. A bridge would also be undermining the philosophy behind the creation of the Daintree World Heritage listing, and would not help our eco-destination accreditations, which currently are a huge draw card and our tourism point of difference to other parts of Queensland. Additionally, I would like to say that there are 2 pieces of information from the survey that need teasing out. Naturally, over this time, there's been a lot of informal conversation with me, as well as the formal submissions. This included people who have told me that they voted for the bridge. Naturally, I asked them why. Why, in your opinion, is a bridge better? At least 50% of those answers were because they thought the ferry costs us money instead of providing a revenue, and that a bridge would lower our rates instead of probably increasing them. When I explained the whole situation, they changed their minds. So of that percentage of people who voted for a bridge, maybe they could be halved. The second thing of note from my conversation is in regard to cost covering or revenue raising. It appears that insufficient information to the local people make them believe that the cost to cross the river would increase for locals instead of the ferry card that we have, which basically for a 2-year card is basically nothing. Now let's take a step back to the Merrill Minute that brought us to this hugely costly and time-wasting experience. And it was time-wasting, and I'll explain why. I've been telling you that what the results would be from the beginning. And why did I know it was going to be like this? Well, unsurprisingly, for the last 4 years, I've been listening to the whole cross-section of the Shire, not just a few. I've been involved in understanding tourism and our product difference in Douglas, working with TPDD, and how the ferry plays in promotion of the Shire. I've been learning the importance of eco-accreditation and improving my knowledge on the environment and impacts it's facing going forward. I have a good understanding about revenue raising and profit and loss for council budgets. I've been engaging myself in truly knowing what the communities of Douglas want. So, I will now use the words that I have heard bantered around the media. Now councils are fully informed. Well, I was always fully informed. And as a fully informed, genuine and savvy councillor, I always knew what the results were going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolly. Councillor Scomberson?
Okay, I'm just a little bit confused here how this has gone ahead, because I was under this understanding that we were going to resume, the report was going to come back to the meeting for further discussion and resolution, which it's not going to happen. It also states this in the public assessment report, which also communicated to the public who attended the consultation and the DSC media report, saying that with all the information it was going to come back to be discussed. So we're not going to do that. We're going straight back into negotiations. If this is the case, as a councillor, I have not been given the right to voice my opinion on the outcome of this report, and I've not been given a chance to ask questions regarding the feedback which I have received from the community in this open meeting. This has not been open and transparent. And now the motion's changed this morning without any consultation. The assumption is that councillors support the report and the 2 ferries is not correct. That's your assumption, that we are now going to go in and support this report that's been done for the 2 ferry solution. The concept of the 2 ferry solution is we are going to get a bigger ferry, which will operate most of the time, and the current ferry will be used in peak times. I would have thought that to have a backup ferry or for emergencies would have been a requirement of the current contract. So it's not. So this is why we're now going back out to a 2 ferry solution. Through this whole process, and I respect the people that have voted, my main concern through this whole process was the cost to the ratepayers of this Shire. I didn't care if we got a bridge or we got 2 ferries or we just ended up with 1. It was the costings to the people of this Shire. This is a very important decision to make as a councillor, and it is imperative that the correct decision is made so to at least impact the ratepayers who will alternatively foot the bill. You know, we've had petitions that went out, 30,000 people, as Councillor Zamataro said. But how many of those people that filled that petition are actually ratepayers of this Shire who will foot the bill at the end of the day? The previous council, which is 3 present in this room, were privy to the new ferry contract from the beginning and are fully aware of the details that are in the contract. As for myself and Councillor McEwen, have not been brought up to speed on anything to do with the contract, and as such, I feel blinded and I'm required to make a decision when not having the full facts of the implications for this Shire. Prior to any contract being signed, we must ensure that any and all necessary permits are in place, such as the new infrastructure to be built on the second ferry channel and the additional dredging permits. Why would we enter into a contract or even start to negotiate a contract if we're going to lose the current income and expect the ratepayers of this shire to make up the balance with increased rates and ticket prices? We have many families and businesses in the shire who have done it tough through COVID, and some are beginning to recover and expect a rate rise to make up the loss of this is outrageous. This seems to be a very expensive contract for the shire, and I do not believe this is the right way forward. We have so many options that have not been looked at to help the ratepayers of this shire. The current contract will cease on the 30th of June 21, and it is the council's responsibility to ensure the continuation of the ferry service by whatever means necessary. I feel we will be entering uncharted territory before I will not support this recommendation. But as the recommendation has changed, I will support for the CEO to continue negotiations, but I expect Councillor McEwen and I to have the contract and all information available to us before anything further is done. We need to understand that the ratepayers of this shire have to pay for the tourist industry in this shire for many years, and people just can't afford it anymore. And that's it. So I think we have so many more options. We've had so many reports done over many, many years in this shire, recommendations put to council what to do, and we've taken probably hardly anything. North Priority Lane. All these things are for safety reasons and to help the ratepayers of this shire, and we have not done it.
May I ask a question? Is that okay? Yep, I am. Good chair. I'm guessing you would like there would be varying versions of the contract. There'd be the original.
Yeah.
Then there'd be the one that I suppose had been negotiated up until when it was stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you probably like the different versions. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Scomerson. I appreciate where you're coming through with that. I just want to comment that no one ever argued that the bridge concept wasn't going to be expensive, but it had to be out there for people to make an educated decision on which way. So many people were saying they want a bridge, and as I said, a third of the community was saying they want a bridge. So it had to be out there for them to see an approximate what those costs were going to be to make a decision whether they were still supporting the bridge compared to a ferry. So I think that was really important for those details to be out there. We can all meet people on the street and say, what did you choose, and talk them into believing what we believe by telling them our points of view. That's quite easy to do. And, Councillor Noel, you mentioned that you were fully up on everything. We had numerous community consultation days that you weren't there to listen to the people's comments at those meetings. So there was lots of people that had different arguments, and I think it's very important that we are aware of everyone's perspectives, not just on the street. Those meetings are very important. With that, though, we'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Is that over and done with? We'll just change stuff, please. Yes.
For a little while.
And I'll move out.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Rightio, we're ready to get going. So 5.2, the material change of use for retirement facility at 111 to 119 Port Douglas Road. The recommendation is that council approves the material change of use development application for retirement facility over land described as lot 3 RP 729991, subject to the following approved drawings and/or documents, and the document goes on. I can have a mover, please. Councillor Scomerson, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Scomerson, would you like to talk about it all?
I think it's a great idea. It's a little bit forward for our shire moving forward, and I think the real estate in the shire at the moment is doing really well, and there's people that want to live up here. So a retirement village, like this is a great idea.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Any other comments from councillors?
Just myself. As we've heard many times, we've had people in here telling us about the demographics of the Shire. And this is one area where I believe that we have been short, and I think it'll be a great success.
Thank you. Yes, clearly there's been a lot of work gone into this project. I'm very aware of the need for this sort of housing type. I am sad to see the destruction of a perfectly good pool that was there, but I know we're currently working on a solution for that issue, and the benefits of this development far outweigh that as this critical stage of our economic development post-COVID-19 happens, because developments such as this we have seen are needed. So that we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thanks, you. Change staff and look at Councillor Knowles. Oh no, we're not changing staff, we're keeping staff for the next one, aren't we? Yeah. Oh, go back. Okay. Right, so the next one, a minor change to development approval for seafood van at 11 Warner Street. The recommendation is council approves the minor change to development approval for material change of use shop over land described as lot 37 on PTD 2091, subject to the following conditions which are in the document. I'd like to have a mover for that, please. Councillor Nolly. Seconded by Councillor McEwen, got in there. Anyone against? Any further comments?
Yes, thank you. On the 29th of September, the original report, I voted against the limitation of only 3 months. I said it was too onerous. So I'm very happy that they have been given an extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolly. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Yep. Thank you. All right, so 5.4, application to change MCUC short-term accommodation auxiliary facilities at 20 Water Street, Port Douglas. The recommendation is that council approves the amendment to the existing development permit for a material change of use for short-term accommodation motel with auxiliary uses for food and drink outlet bar over land previously described as Lot 1 on RP 718896, part of Lot 1 on SP 26783 and easements B and C on SP 154579 and currently described as Lot 1 on SP 316373 and easement B on C on SP 154579, whereby the conditions which are here in that. I'm happy to move this one if I'm not seconder. Councillor Scomerton. As I said, I'm happy to move this, which is a minor amendment to an original approval. This document provided by staff very clearly shows that the amendment is within the planning scheme and not only is only a small change from the original approval that was moved at the time by Councillor Lloyd and Councillor Nolly back in December 2019 and was carried unanimously by councillors. Unfortunately, then I don't recall it being called a high-rise building, but anyway. This change will allow them to put in a pergola covered plunge pool with disability access, which really is common sense to be sun smart and water conscious these days. I'd like to thank the planning staff for their logical thinking and again for providing a detailed report which clearly shows why they have recommended for councillors to approve this change, which ensures compliance with the Planning Act 2016 and satisfies the benchmarks of the 2018 Douglas Shire Planning Scheme. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Any further comments?
Question, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan.
If we didn't approve the recommendation today, it would not actually change the capacity of the Warrego Hotel, would it?
No, it doesn't change the number of rooms in any
Nothing
way.
like that. And when the DA, from memory, first came in last year, it is over, just over a year ago, was there anything of this nature that, was there any indication that something like this would ever come back to council? Did they want to do this originally, and it was suggested by the planners not to, or was there any indication in your memory that this was going to
They
happen?
had an inquiry originally
Yeah.
before the application was lodged to put a pool
Yeah,
or some facility on the roof area.
yeah,
And it was a much deeper pool, so hence it had a much higher impact. I had concerns with them because they had not put in all abilities access
Mhm.
and have really pushed them to consider that. Hence, the lift well is where it is situated on the boundary, so that has to go up to that height, and you need a covering on that lift well to ensure good, safe access. They still have one step and will need to look at some ramping to get a better abilities access to the pool area. There was concern that it didn't have any sort of outdoor recreation, truly outdoor. So they have sort of married this in. It's a very interesting design of what they're proposing. This traveller that doesn't have baggage, that doesn't really want to hang around the pool as we normally do. So it's a different model of accommodation, short-term accommodation, than what we're used to. And in effect, it's trying to utilise some of that roof area. It's not really intended to expand much further than that, given that they'll put some solar on the back part and, you know, it's a small area. So they had looked at it, but it was too difficult originally. And we also had concerns on the ground floor about the manoeuvrability of vehicles because of the slope nature of that. So we had a lot of technical engineering concerns without even looking at height for that first application. Hence it came in, we had a lot of discussions about the ground floor. That was resolved and they'd seemed to put aside the pool consideration.
Are there any planning obligations to have a cover over a pool? So could they put the plunge pool in and not necessarily have the cover?
They could.
Yes.
Whenever we see a pool, we say, where's the cover?
Yeah.
A lot of people from south of anywhere think you have a pool and you all like it. And we sort of say in the wet season, it gets really hot. So you really need to have a cover. We would recommend, you know, in any instance of some shade over pool areas. Some people do it by landscaping. They can have palm trees that then have some shade over the pool. But, you know, I don't know many people who will sit in the sun in a pool up here. So it's trying to explain to developers that any pool should have at least some covering or some shade on it. It's a bit like a bath otherwise and not very pleasant and doesn't give people that protection.
And earlier you just said that a deeper pool would have had greater implications. What did you mean, like on the whole building structure?
It would be on the whole building structure, so they'd have to go down and consume some level of area and reduce that area beneath. They'd have a lot more plant equipment. So it's just a completely different design. Here they've got sort of shafts of vegetation that go through the stories. And we were very pedantic about having individual balconies meeting that minimum size area for each unit. So they have their own private balconies. So this is a separate little area that they have.
And it would add, like the pavilion of gold, it would add about 4 meters high, is that correct? I think just under 4 meters perhaps?
I'd say it's probably at the most, it might be 3,
Yeah.
3.5. You've got a few steps up because it has the pool base of it there. So, you know, it's not a deep pool in any sort of sense. And they've tried to minimise it. They've tried to minimise where it is in the structure and marrying it into that. When they first put it, they didn't have the lift well, as either going up. And I said, well, you just can't talk to me if you're going to do that. You know, you have to have an all abilities
Oh,
access
absolutely.
to these communal areas. And many years ago, you didn't need to do that. So it's just a standard that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? With that, then we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. 5.5, Cycle Network Local Government Grant Program 2021 Kuya to Mosman Stage 2 construction. Start over. Good morning. Thank you. All right, so our recommendation is for council to resolve to enter into a funding agreement with the State of Queensland, represented by the Department of Transport and Main Roads, under the Cycle Network Local Government Grants Program for the Kuya to Mosman Stage 2 construction. Contribute 50% towards the total project cost of the project, and to be allocated in the 21-22 budget, and delegate authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to administer the above matters. If I could have a mover for that, please. Councillor Zamatara, seconded by Councillor Scomerson. Just got in quickly there. Councillor Zamatara, would you like to speak to this?
Through you, Mayor Kirst, I think it's a great idea. It's heading in the right direction, the developing cycleways, Shire-wide, which we've talked about, enhanced tourism. I'd like us to see the Port Douglas, Mosman and Port Douglas develop over the next few years. I think that's very important we do that.
Absolutely. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Any further comments by councillors?
Great idea.
All right, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, team, swap sides again. We're going for 5.6, which is the Douglas Hockey Association Incorporated Trustee Permit, part of Lot 92 SR 81 Mosman. The recommendation is that council offer a trustee permit to the Douglas Hockey Association Incorporated over part of the Lot 92 Crown Plan SR 81 Mosman, a term of 1 year from the date of execution, maintain the external permit area, utilising the terms and conditions of the standard terms and condition document registered under dealings number 717940164, and also the state's mandatory terms document registered under number 7119329333. Lease payments to be $500 per annum plus GST, and of course delegates authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to determine and finalise any matters associated with the exemption of the trustee permit. If I could have a mover, please, for that one. Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Thompson, would you like to speak to that?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. The only thing I'd like to ask is that, is the hockey being looked after in the new sports plan for Coronation Park? They are? Yeah.
There's definitely plans for it. Anyone wish to speak against this motion? Any comments?
Just a question. A term of 1 year, is there any reason why it's just 1 year? Is it just bring in line with anything, or?
Through the chair, it's along with the master plan.
Oh, okay.
Implementation.
Yeah.
It can be extended. If we
Yeah.
need to.
Okay.
1 year should be enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, that will put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The same stuff again? All right. So 5.7, we have the application for a permanent road closure over Esplanade adjacent to Lot 2 RP 724386 Port Douglas. And this is to delegate authority under 257 of Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to execute a Form Part C as Road Manager, advising the Department of Natural Resources and Mines and Energy the Council cannot authorise proposed permanent road closure over the Esplanade in Port Douglas adjoining Lot 2 on RP 724386 as per attached. However, it requests DNRME to consider an application under the Land Act 1994 in relation to this matter. and delegates authority under Section 257 Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise any or all matters associated with this application. If I can have a mover on that one, please. I'm happy to move that myself. Anyone seconded? Councillor McEwen. Thank you. And this, as the report states, is just purely the fact that the council can't do it, so we are giving permission so that the applicant can go to the state. That's all it is. So, anyone wish to speak against the motion?
No, but I do have a couple of questions, please.
Councillor Nolan?
Thank you. I understand absolutely what this report is about, but I'm just thinking about going forward. I'm guessing that this means that the adjacent landowner eventually wants to buy that piece of land. Has that been indicated, or can he even make an application to buy that piece of land once it's no longer a road? Is that how that can work?
Through the chair, the road,
Yeah.
the land you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
What happens now, council will give approval so
Yeah.
it can apply to DNRME.
Yep.
DNRME will advertise it publicly.
Yep.
Council can then comment on the actual proposal in depth. If DNRME approve it,
Mhm.
he purchases the land off them
Yes.
and then amalgamates that part of the road into his existing allotment.
Oh, so he automatically gets that piece of land.
Yeah, providing there is no adverse public comment.
You know, I understand. I'm just imagining if it goes forward. Okay, and then he can develop on that
As he sees it,
as, you know, as a normal application.
as long as it's within planning stage.
Yeah, yes, as a normal application, okay. Without trying to anticipate anything, is this something that we should be alarmed about? I mean, it's on the hill, we have had landslides, that type of thing.
Through the chair, council will be able to comment on this
Okay.
during the advertising period. And council officers will prepare a report
Yeah,
during this time for council consideration.
all right, thank you.
Any other comments from councillors? With that, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
It's a valuable piece of land, isn't it? Yes.
Times, what sides here?
She's got another.
Good morning. All right, so we've got financial report November 2020. The recommendation is the council notes the financial report for the period ended 30th November 2020. If I can have a mover, please. Councillor Thompson. Seconded by Councillor Zamataro. Councillor Thompson, would you like to speak to this?
No, not really. It's just another good report done every month from finance. It's very informative, so well done.
Thank you. Anyone wishes to speak against the motion? Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Nolan?
Question, thank you. Just one question, fairly quick, I think. It just mentions that the depreciation is 227,000 under budget. So from my understanding, is that eventually going to catch up before the end of the financial year, or is that just because in the end we discovered that we didn't need to budget that extra 227,000? Do you understand the
Yeah.
question, the difference? Yeah, thank you.
Through the mayor, it is budgeted to catch up by the end of the year.
Okay, yes,
It is based on when
yes.
items are actually capitalised throughout the year. So as they're completed and processed, then the depreciation processes
Thank you.
as it happens. So it should catch up.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? With that, we'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
I'll see what you are. No one got a bonus. No one got a bonus.
Welcome. Good morning. Right, so the next thing on the list is 5.9, Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Annual and Quarterly Reports for noting. The recommendation, of course, is the council receives and notes the Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Annual Report for 2019-2020, submitted in accordance with the Resource and Performance Agreement between TPDD and the Douglas Shire Council, and receives and notes the TPDD's July to September Quarterly Activity Report 2020 to 2021. If I could have a mover for that, please. Councillor Nolan. Seconded by Councillor Zamataro. Councillor Nolan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I cannot praise enough this organisation, and I will continue to advocate for full funding to be reinstated next year and an unprecedented 4-year contract awarded to them in these uncertain times so as to project and progress the way forward to Douglas tourism. As always, a super strong board, they have now brought back their founding father, and he works smartly with his team. Douglas, as a shire, has received the highest consumer sentiment ranking in the world through Destination Think. And Douglas is the first shire to achieve Eco Destination certification. TPD and Douglas Shire has developed the Great Barrier Reef Drive. These are just a couple of things that have occurred over the last year. Also in their report, they highlight that this destination was travelling on par for the 2018-19 year, for the first 6 months of that financial year, and improved over the summer until COVID-19 decimated occupancy and room rates. So TPTD has been doing and has continued to do an excellent job. So well done.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Any further comments from councillors? Okay. I will say yes, it's a fantastic report that they've put together for us. And yes, they were definitely travelling on par. But as we all know, our GRP is down by 28% still since the global financial crisis. So what we're trying to do is to build it even better and bigger and stronger, and that's what we'll continue to do with our economic development strategies. With that, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Right, so 5.10, contract 2021-048 Killaloe Transfer Station Resource Recovery Centre. The recommendation is the council resolves to award contract number 2021-048 Killaloe Transfer Station Resource Recovery Centre to Byron Builders Proprietary Limited for the cost of $1,029,360 inclusive of GST, and delegates authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate, finalise and execute any and all matters in relation to this contract. If I can have a mover for that one, please. Councillor Scomerton, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Scomerton, did you wish to talk to this at all? No, thank you. Anyone speaking against the motion? Any comments from councillors? Councillor Nolan?
That's a question again. Thank you. I suppose where I'm coming from with this question is reassurance. There's only one Douglas submission. The rest are fairly local. And I just want reassurance from the staff. I know you've given us some information, but obviously we're not on the panel as councillors, that we cannot, that staff cannot record submission as the number one, and kind of just work through the whole process, if you don't mind, as much as possible without obviously saying things you're not allowed to say. If you could just perhaps speak through the reasoning why you decided really number one should be number one. Put my mind to ease. That's basically what I'm asking, please.
Through the mayor. The process with the 5 tenders that we had, 3 out of the 5 were local. Were Cairns based.
Yeah.
Pricing, tender submission in program. What was it? Work health and safety, methodology of their works, and their experience. Bryant's have been around since 1984 as a builder. They have been local. They have nominated that they will use 75% of their contractors as local subcontractors. And that was part of the reason why they got a score of, I think it was 16 out of 20 for their local business. And the other percentage of 40% of price driven was why, I'd say, the contract went to Bryant's.
Question, man. When you say local subbies, do you mean Douglas Shire local or Cairns local?
That's how they have nominated them in their tender submission, as Douglas
Douglas
contractors.
Shire local.
Yes, of course, our procurement process is quite extreme, and you know the guys do a great job in ensuring that we do as local as much as we possibly can. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, 5.11. Good morning. We need to get some automated tools. Right, 5.1 Amendment Declaration of Sewer and Water Service Area within Douglas Shire. The recommendation is that Council resolves to declare that the Douglas Shire Council is the service provider for the provision of reticulated water and sewage services within Douglas Shire. Declare the revised maps attached indicate that the service areas within the coloured boundary relevant area for reticulated water and sewage within Douglas Shire. If I could have a mover, please, on that one. Councillor Zamataro, and seconded by Councillor Scommers got in there. Councillor Zamataro, would you like to speak to this?
Oh, no, thanks, man. I think it's fairly obvious that Douglas Shire Council have to be the provider for our reticulated water and sewage.
I hope so.
I'm not sure why we're even discussing it, actually.
Technicalities. Anyone wishes to speak against that? Any other comments from councillors? We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Last on the list today, 5.12 Contractual Water Ultrafiltration Cartridges for Water Quality. The recommendation is that Council resolves to, in accordance with Section 235 of the Local Government Regulations 2012, to accept a single source quotation from Aquatech Private Limited for an amount of $262,430 excluding GST for the purchase of 52 of the Kosh cartridges, Targa 118072 PM50 is the model, and that seeks Council's approval to award a contract for the purchase of the Kosh cartridges from Aquatech Private Limited, and of course 3 delegates authority under the Chief Executive Officer in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009 to negotiate, finalise and execute any and all matters in relation to this contract or agreement. If I can have a mover, please, on that one. Councillor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Scomerson. Councillor McEwen, did you wish to speak to it at all?
Not really, it's a process and we've only got one person we can buy it from, so.
Anyone wish to speak against the motion? No. Any other questions or comments from councillors?
Yeah, and one question, in the table 3, we've got other cost details and TBA. What costs are they associated?
That'll be costs through you, Chair. That will be costs associated with the installation and getting them functional. So just project costs.
Do you know off the top what that would be?
No, I don't. But it'll be within that budget there.
Okay.
With that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. All right, no other comments. We'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? And Councillor Zamataro? Yep, and that's carried unanimously. And that concludes today's session. There's no closed sessions. And the time is 11:02 that we're closing the meeting. Thank you very much.